So, if you clicked on that video, you're probably learning Japanese right now. Whether the reason is anime, wanting to move to Japan, which is an amazing thing that I myself did, or anything else, learning Japanese is actually hard. And that's true even if people on the internet tell you the opposite. Yeah, you have thousands of characters, words, grammar patterns, and even a pitch accent to learn. But wait, don't leave that video yet. I'm here to bring you hope because speaking Japanese at a high level is actually totally possible and in a shorter time than you would think. I mean, Japanese kids speak the language better than you at like 3 years old without any Yankee sentence mining. But before talking about any solution, you need to understand why the Japanese language is so specific and hard, so you can counter it. Okay, so Japanese, according to the Foreigner Service Institute of the US Department of State, that was a hard one, is a category 5 language, which is the hardest rank, including languages such as Arabic, Mandarin, Korean, and Japanese. Also, many institutes consider Japanese actually harder than the other languages in the same group, which makes it the hardest language in the world. By the way, this ranking is for native English speaker only. You will understand that later. But how many hours does it actually take, you may ask? 2,200 class hours. Yep, we're talking class hours. This represents 8 hours a day of learning in a class with a teacher for 275 consecutive days. Far away from your 5 minutes a day Duolingo streak, right? And if you look at that table published by the Japanese Language Education Center, self-reported study hours go up to almost 5,000 hours for people with no prior Kanji knowledge or classes to reach the N1 level. This is almost 2 years of 8 hours a day of Japanese. But let's talk a bit about the science of why the fuck it's actually so hard. One of the biggest problems of second language acquisition is language transfer. It's basically trying to apply what you know in your native language to the target language, which makes it very confusing when you're learning Japanese, because sometimes it's the opposite of English. It's also the reason why Chinese kids will crush you in your Japanese class, because their language is very similar. As I said earlier, Japanese for them will be in category like 2, what is category 5 for you. You also have to understand that second language acquisition is totally different from a kid learning their first language without always trying to copy-paste concepts from one language to another. And that's without considering that kids learn the language during a specific brain development stage. This specific brain development stage is called critical period hypothesis. Some white-coat big glass scientists think that after a certain age, it is impossible to acquire a native-like level. There's a lot of debate about that period, which usually range from 2 to 13 years old, but you get it. However, the critical period hypothesis gets messy because figuring out what native-like language skill really mean is tricky. It involves things like pronunciation, rhythm, word stress, timing, and a lot of other details. The good news is that when it comes to learning grammar, vocabulary, or articulation, it's actually less related to any critical period. Meaning that whether you're 20 or 40 years old, you can actually acquire a really high proficiency in any language. I mean, you've probably noticed from my accent that I'm French, but I have zero problem understanding English, writing, speaking about anything, which basically makes me fluent, right? And I learned with the exact method I'm going to talk about. But before that, let's quickly talk about pitch accent. Remember when I was talking about the critical period hypothesis, pitch accent is one of the things that will be harder when it comes to learning Japanese, especially if you're a native Italian or English speaker, for example. That might be a hot take, but do you actually need that perfect accent? I mean, you will never be Japanese, and that's totally fine. As long as people can understand you 100%, you might not need that perfect Japanese pitch accent. I actually think that accent is also part of your identity. Actually, 90% of Japanese words are not defined by their pitch accent. I know, there are words such as hashi, or
hashi,
or
ame,
or
ame.
But with a bit of context, Japanese with their top IQ will have no problem understanding you. So yeah, if you're not planning to move to Japan permanently, you actually don't need to invest so much time in learning Japanese. Maybe just a few hundred hours will be perfectly fine for you to enjoy anime and visit Japan a few times in your life. But I know that's not what you wanna hear, so why would you actually need so many hours to learn Japanese? Are there any shortcuts? let's imagine you want to reach a native level. An average Japanese native speaker knows about 30,000 words, 3,000 kanji, and maybe 2,000 grammar patterns. Kanji is usually the hardest thing to learn for people. Why? Each kanji has multiple readings with a specific stroke order, and a lot are similar to each other, making it hard to remember. For example, this is the kanji for person. It reads at hito, but if you want to say two person, it will be read at futari, and if you want to say foreigner, gaijin. Yeah, that's messed up. Oh, by the way, a person with an N1 level, which is the highest proficiency test in Japanese, knows around 10 to 15,000 words and 2,000 kanji, which is basically 30 to 50% of a native speaker level. Yep, this is why most people quit learning Japanese. It's actually hard. Very hard. However, I have excellent news for you, and there is a secret. But don't continue this video if you're not really willing to reach a high level in Japanese, because just learning a few basic sentences will be enough if you're planning a trip to Japan. So, for the real weebs like me, let's continue. Around 5,000 to 8,000 words and about 1,200 kanji cover approximately 90% of Japanese you would encounter every day. So, now you're going to ask me, how do I learn those 90% of the Japanese language used daily? Or even, how do I reach a native-like level? I really want to become a Japanese speaker. The solution? Acquisition by immersion. Oh my god, how do I immerse myself? I don't even live in Japan! Don't worry, you don't need to. Actually, I've met people who achieved the fluency in Japanese before even stepping a foot in Japan. We're lucky to live in a world where you can access a ton of resources from your computer or phone for free, or just for a few dollars. Let's put that in perspective. A few years ago, people had a $50 dictionary and super expensive classes to learn a language. We're actually very lucky. The problem is that there are so many resources out there that people don't know where to start. Instead of actually learning the language, they end up watching videos about learning language. Probably what you're doing right now. Okay, so here is exactly what you need to do. First, learn the 46 hiragana and katakana. Katakana are basically hiragana for foreigner words, headphone, which means headphone. With kana, you will be able to write and pronounce anything in Japanese. Cool, right? There are a ton of apps to practice this, but I recommend learning by writing them again and again. It helps you remember them more easily. You will continue to review kana naturally as you learn words or read things. So don't worry if you're a bit slow at first when recalling them. No, real immersion can begin. What you need to do is expose yourself to Japanese input as much as possible. But not just any input. You need comprehensible input. And if possible, things you like. You've probably heard about that term in language learning communities or from the famous Stefan Krashen who popularized it. But what does it mean? Basically, it's exposing yourself to content that's slightly above your current level. Imagine you know 70% of a sentence. Thanks to the context, you can infer the missing 30%. By doing this repeatedly, you will eventually pick up the missing piece until you understand 99.9% of what you consume. Easy, right? Let me give you a concrete example. Juice o kopu ni iremasu. So, no, let's do it again with an image. Juice o kopu ni iremasu. Got it? This one is pretty easy because juice and kopu come from English. So let's imagine you're missing iremasu. Thanks to the context, you can figure out that it means something like to pour. The problem with immersion is that people start with content that is too difficult, like anime, and lose motivation fast because they don't understand anything. Yep, because if watching anime with English subtitle worked, all you weebs would already be fluent. No, shine and yamete doesn't count. In fact, some studies show that watching things with English subtitle is almost useless when learning a target language. The biggest problem with immersion? Kanji. Kanji is really a pain. Whether you're looking at a sign on the street, reading a book, or playing a video game, if you can't read the kanji, which makes up 90% of sentence, how are you supposed to learn by immersion like you would do in any other language? And learning the 2000 Joyo kanji doesn't help much with reading. Why? Because the reading changes depending on the kanji it's paired with. You might recognize the word, but you can't read or pronounce it, and that's a problem. So, what kind of content should you consume? For me, the best way to learn Japanese is by reading. I know it might sound boring, but hear me out. Reading lets you learn vocabulary, grammar, and kanji all at the same time in a context. But you said kanji was impossible to read. Yep, that's why you need furigana or integrated dictionary. And thanks to the internet, all of that is possible. Actually, let me be transparent with you. I've been working for over a year with a friend on the perfect reading app, and you can use it for free. It's called Shinobi Japanese. You can read small illustrated stories, click on any words to get its definition, examples, access grammar explanation, toggle furigana on or off, play audio, and even create flashcards for the words. you saved. There are tons of stories for all levels, and each one is written by native speakers. We even manually input the hiragana to avoid any mistake from automated tools, because even popular tools like Yomi-chan can make errors. And it's not their fault, it's just how Japanese is. Everything is stuck together and it's hard for robots to detect what a word is and how to pronounce it in a specific context. Still, Yomi-chan is a really great tool I would recommend for immersion. As I said earlier, the more input you get, the better. So, here is a basic plan I would recommend for a beginner to immerse. Flashcards. Just brute force the most basic vocab. There are a lot of Anki Quizlet decks like Japanese Core that present essential vocab, basic grammar, learn particles and basic conjugation. I really like that guy. He has very straightforward video, just follow his playlist to get the basics. Books like Tai Kim's Grammar Guide are also great. After just that, you will already be able to make sentences and understand basic Japanese. Amazing, right? Now, the real immersion can begin. First, install a dictionary on your phone. I would recommend Shirabe Shisho if you have an iPhone. It's the best dictionary. If you're on Android, I've heard good things about Yomiwa. Then, try replacing whatever show or YouTube video you usually watch with an easy Japanese Netflix show like Terrace House or random YouTube channels. There is a lot of content to immerse yourself in, and I will put links in the description. Just pick something you like. I know you're busy, so whenever you're outside, at the gym, going to school, or working on a task that don't need full focus, listen to easy podcasts. Podcasts for Japanese learners are super popular now, and you will have plenty of options. Read as much as possible, navigate the web in Japanese, and force yourself to get used to kanji. Very important, get used to checking your dictionary whenever you come across of a frequent word that you really need to know. You don't have to pause every time, as that might get annoying, but identifying keywords is essential. Having to pause every time could also mean that you're consuming content that's too hard for your current level. Also, don't forget to keep up with flashcards at the same time. Use pre-made decks or create your own from the content you're consuming. The important thing is to encounter vocabulary you already seen in flashcard. It will literally print in your brain. So yeah, that's basically how you immerse. Do that every day and trust me, you will achieve a good level pretty fast. Now, what about output? How do you actually get to the point of speaking the language? The good news is that after getting so much input, your brain will naturally process the information and your speaking skills will catch up. You will make mistakes, but you will correct them and improve quickly, so don't worry. If you have some money to invest, I would recommend online classes on websites like Preply. You can find pretty affordable classes. Taking 1 or 2 classes a week will help you practice speaking the language, maintain discipline, and stay motivated. If you're broke, you can just join a language exchange community on Discord, or you can use language exchange apps. Personally, I haven't tried language exchange apps so much. I'm not sure how effective they are, but they're worth exploring. Oh, and don't underestimate the value of speaking alone. Try to use the input you've gathered. Search in the dictionary to construct sentences. And even better, you can practice with ChatGPT. It's not perfect, but it's getting pretty good for practicing Japanese conversation. So yeah, to sum it up, learning Japanese to an advanced level is hard and it takes a lot of effort. But you can do it if you use the right methods and stay consistent. Just read, listen to, and watch Japanese every day. But don't forget flashcards, and you reach a good level. It's not even a question. Anyway, really give my app Shinobi Japanese a try. I was in the exact same situation when I started thinking about the most optimized way to learn Japanese. If you want to see more videos or have recommendations, please leave a comment. Saraba. Da.